I'm immersed in this AI risk stuff. I read Twitter all the time. I spend videos, articles. I'm just watching all this stuff all the time. And my general impression, even just for myself, about the inside OpenAI stuff, right? About the for-profit, nonprofit, the board, the director leaving, Altman getting fired, the whole thing is like, is this like a LinkedIn corporate boardroom story, or is this like a affecting the thing I'm worried about that's going to kill my kid story? You know what I mean? Like it seems so disconnected. It seems like, oh, the board is going through this formation and this formation and this formation. And so I had been putting the whole thing at arm's length for a while and being like, it just seems like too complicated for me to deal with. And then I read Karen Howe's book, Empire of AI, which really like gets into it to some degree. And I was like, ooh, there's actually a lot in here that is revealing about the personalities, the dynamics, the things that are happening. So just talk a little bit about how, when you at the 50,000 foot level, the what's going on with the structure of OpenAI story seems hard to sort of wrap your arms around, and then show me how it like really gets to the real safety questions.
Yeah. The funny thing about telling the story is that you can do it all through the words of its founders. So, you can look back at what Sam Altman was saying in 2015 and what's been reported since then in books like Karen Howe's and Kichegi's about OpenAI when it was founded. And at the time, what I've gathered is that there was a sense that Google DeepMind was far and away in the lead.
Yeah.
And people were worried because they thought this is one of the most dangerous technologies that humanity will ever develop. And currently a for-profit company is beating everybody else by a mile. And so what we need to do is we need to create a nonprofit organization. And we need to make sure that we are making an effort to develop this technology in a way that prioritizes public benefit, whether that means, developing it safely and giving it away for free, or whether it means realizing that we don't actually have the safeguards we need. We need to press pause until we figure out how to implement those safeguards. And it seemed like this is something the OpenAI founders realized, right? We have a quote from Sam Altman in 2015 from unearthed emails and legal documents saying things like, I've been wondering if it's possible to stop humanity from developing AI. I think it's not. So therefore, we should do this. And saying, of course, this organization will aggressively support all regulation. These are things that are very interesting to compare to things that Sam Altman says now, only 10 years later. And so it was created as this nonprofit. There's kind of like three main stages. That was the 2015 idealist stage. In 2019, they realized...
Can I just jump in real quick with one? Was it... no, it's fine. Was it genuinely concern about Google getting control of this thing by one corporation, and the concern was that's bad for the people of the planet? Or was there some part of the concern even then that was like corporate racing, and it was like, we can't let it be Google, it should be this or this company or this company. We can't have it be one company. So even in that origin moment, how much of it was like corporate battle versus good of humanity?
I'm sure that it was a mix to some extent. There were, I want to say, 11 co-founders. 8 of the 11, I believe, have now left. So I'm sure that different people had different values here, and that OpenAI exists today, which is very much just a hyperscaler that is acting as if it were a kind of for-profit race to superintelligence for commercial reasons from the get-go. That might have been more dominant in the worldview of people like Sam Altman, who managed to stick around as 8 of the 11 left. But I think at the time there was a genuine mix of motivations. And in fact, I don't think it was just race to the finish, because, Sam Altman has said he wishes that he had started the whole thing as a for-profit from the get-go. And indeed, that would have been easier for them, because they would have been able to raise money earlier on and faster. And obviously now investors are making funding conditional on the gutting of the nonprofit. So, I do believe that there must have been some genuine motivation, because if it was just a race to the finish thing, just spin up the for-profit. Everyone would say, oh, wow, this is another AI startup, typical Silicon Valley. So,
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. Continue.
No worries. So, 2019 comes around. They realize they need money. And, we could debate how legitimate those justifications are, but the heart of the reasoning was that if you want to stay at the frontier, if you want to stay at the frontier of safety, you have to be at the frontier of capabilities. They were thinking that, in order to make sure that AI benefits humanity, we need to actually be making AI such that we can be making it safely. If we're just sitting on the sidelines, people like Google have no reason to listen to us. And so they were thinking about this, and they decided what we need is a hybrid structure where we spin up this for-profit subsidiary that is actually capable of taking investment money and commercializing a product. But there are certain safeguards in place to make sure that no matter what, it's our mission that matters at the end of the day. And so what those safeguards looked like was that they were going to have this nonprofit that was controlling everything about this for-profit subsidiary. This is total managerial control. So they got the say for like whether or not certain people have equity, whether or not the models are released, on what timeline. It's like the nonprofit makes all the actual day-to-day decisions for the for-profit, or at least has the right to make those decisions, even if the for-profit is doing it de facto. The nonprofit at any point can step in and say, stop that. At the same time, there's a limit to investor influence. Is that a working model?
Does that work somewhere? Do people do that? That's a working model with the nonprofit on top. This thing they built was like, they're like, oh yeah, that's reasonable.
It was pretty innovative. I don't see it doesn't seem like in the past 5 years it stopped them from becoming the fastest growing tech company on earth. So I think they've proven de facto that they could do it. Maybe the question is it working in terms of like, does it have teeth when push comes to shove and when difficult decisions have to be made? And I think looking at the November 2023 firing and rehiring of Altman, maybe that paints a bleaker picture where it's not working in the sense that when push comes to shove, investors really do have quite a say. And then another safeguard they had then that they really insisted was important at the time was this limit to investor returns. So they said that investors can make a maximum of 100x the initial they put in, and that multiple was going to drop over time. So they said that in 2019. By 2021, they said it was down to a single-digit multiplier. So from 100x potential returns to like 10x or lower potential returns. And they really insisted this was important at the time. I think, Sam Altman and Greg Brockman have at various times said that if they succeed, all but a slice of the value they generate will go to humanity as a result of these profit caps.
Yes. Well, are you ready for your 8 billion slices of compute to be delivered evenly to all citizens of Earth?
Yeah. And what I think is the most crazy making part of this is this quiet change that we talk about in the OpenAI files that they made in 2023, where they had that limit. So yeah, the idea was that like investors, if they put $1 billion in, they can make $100 billion, which is what Google makes in a year. But then after that, if they make $1 trillion, if they make $10 trillion, that all goes to humanity. In 2023, they quietly changed that limit to increase by 20% a year starting in 2025. They didn't seemingly announce that they made this change. So the reason that like I know about it and the world knows about it is because it was quietly reported in like offhand mentions in a story about something else in The Economist and The Information at the time. But 20% a year is, when you really internalize like compounding growth, which you have to like think about AI, that is a wild growth rate because it's, like 5x the annual growth rate for the economy, maybe twice how much you can expect to make in the stock market under optimal conditions. And it gets to a place where like if the limit was like $100 billion now, then within 40 years, it's suddenly like $100 trillion. And then very, very quickly, like within the next 1,000 years, which maybe sounds a little bit farcical, but like the founders were actually thinking about like the long-term future here. Sam Altman said, the reason the profit caps are important is because they could capture the future light cone of all value of the universe.